The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec. Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetec, that's GENETEC.com.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome back for part 2 of our interview series with Tony DaDante. And again, we'll jump right into the show. All right, and I guess the one thing that you kind of touched on was humility, and you actually kind of answered my question a little bit. But do you think this is something that someone, I guess, isn't humble? They don't have that humility. Is that something that they can learn, or is something that life has to teach you, or is that something you just feel is kind of it's either there or it's not?
Can I give you an example out of my own personal life, which sucked at the time?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it had nothing to do with business. So this was at 9/11, okay, and I was an American kickboxer. I studied American kickboxing and boxing and some other arts, but nothing real major. And when we went through this 9/11, I was out in LA, and we had a few thousand people in our headquarters, and suddenly everybody was in fear. They were just afraid, right? Sort of like now. And so I decided out of the blue to say, okay, I'm going to teach. If there are really terrorists and we don't know where they're coming from, I'm going to teach people. I'm going to get their mind out of this. And we took over this whole huge auditorium thing. We got all these 500 people at a time. And we're teaching them self-defense in case of an ambush, an attack, right? Teaching women. So people were getting something out of it. Not that they're going to be the best fighters in the world, but they were getting something out of it, right? Well, right before 9/11, I was driving to work and I saw a jiu-jitsu studio. And I thought, I heard about this stuff. This is before it became big. I heard about this stuff. There's a guy in there. I meet him. He's a plumber. And he must be, I'm about 220, so he must be about 180 pounds. And he says, I go meet him and everything, and we talk, people that we know, and he says, you're welcome to come and spar. I go, okay, I'm fine with that. So I go there, I think it was a Wednesday night, and he's got all his black belts in a circle, and they spar for a minute at a time, and they switch off, and it's a good workout. So we get in there, and it's my turn to go, and I do what I do. I'm dominating. I'm dominating with kicks and punches because that's what I do. Okay, this is the funny part. Because it's something I just didn't know. This is the learning. He says, now we're not going to use fists or legs. It's just going to be grappling. I'm thinking, okay, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I guess I could sprawl with the best of them. I don't know. Anyway, the long story, the end of the story is this. In 32 seconds, this guy, Bobby, got in tight with me. And I'm a guy benching almost 400 pounds. I'm not a weakling. Gets on the top, gets on the side of me. We get on the ground. He gets me in half guard. He chokes me out in 32 seconds. Didn't hit me, didn't punch me, did nothing to me. Okay? That's the definition of being humble, right? So let's bring that to the workplace. And you can imagine how humbled I was. They laughed their asses off. Right? They laughed and laughed because, you know, after that, I got really serious with the Gracies and I learned how valuable this is, right? So you bring this into business as being humble. Being humble is being willing to ask somebody that's an expert to do something. So if you're around managers that say, I got to do it myself because nobody else can do it, they got a humility issue. Because if you know, it's like me. If I work for you, my skill is not technically on the computer. I mean, there's people on LinkedIn that are superior to me, right? I know it. So why am I going to sit there and fumble? And I'm going to say, hey, you know what? This is your part of the mission. This is just what I say when I'm leading people. This is your part of the mission. I'm going to go behind. I got your 6. I'm going to go behind. That's something we don't realize about humility. Humility is being willing to say to yourself, I don't know this, and I got people on my team that do. Let's do it, and I'm gonna be the guy who drives around the cart and gets the parts. It's being willing to step back. Now, you will find a lot of very privileged people. I'm just calling it as I see it, right? You're gonna find this. Okay, and I find it in entertainers, guys that came from nothing into millions, and then they believe you need to open my door this way, you need to get me my coat this way, you need bullshit, right? Inside, I'm saying that because they're paying me a lot of money, but inside, I'm thinking, remember when you lived on the East Side? Remember who you were back then? But they're my customer. I'm going to go with it. But humility, if you can find a way to just be it, you show up as a leader, right? So that's the beauty of being humble. It's not a weakness. It's inspiring. It just is it's like you can't put a definition on it. But if somebody said, that was a pretty humble thing that he did. Yeah, he stepped aside. That's huge. So the original question, do I believe some people can't do it? Yeah, I do. They self-select out. And if you want to run a team of people, this is it, buddy. This is what comes down to it, especially in your business. We want your business to be as boring as possible. Right? We want it to be safe, predictable, and boring. That doesn't mean we don't want the best. That doesn't mean we don't want the fastest critical thinkers. That doesn't mean we want that stuff for when somebody flicks that switch and we need to be there.
Right.
So I just described a job description that doesn't describe many security people. But if I describe that job description and say, this is what I need you for. We want to make sure that we're a boring place. But we're going to be a boring place where people are going to learn. Because when that moment comes, when it's go time, we're not running home to mommy. We are going into the gunfire. We're going to do what we do. We are the team. You know what? And you'll get A players to join you with that. You'll get A players. I've done it in prisons. I did work in prisons, and I was an executive in a private prison system, and they had terrible drop-off rates of security people, correctional officers. You go to one place where you have a very inspiring, humble leader, and you got great correctional officers. Okay, what's up? So it wasn't too hard to find the reasons. So humility. Well, I'd interview for humility all day long. I'd be asking all kind of questions. Give me an example of when. Give me an example of when you were this, when you were that. How do you handle this? Man, that's invaluable, my friend. What else can I tell you? Can I tell you some of the challenges that are ahead of you?
Yeah.
How much time do you got? I got some challenges.
I've got a lot of time.
Okay. I got some challenges. This is for you and for your superiors, and this is stuff that we talk about if we ever do any work together. I wrote them down here. So the number one, have you ever bungee jumped?
I haven't.
Okay, so let me tell you about this experience. So
Okay.
This is because I'm going to use this example. The number one challenge is, how do we get a let go mindset? We need to develop a letting go mindset. So not holding on to the past, right? And in order to have that letting go mindset, we got to know that there's some sort of safe spot somewhere. It doesn't have to be a big, beautiful swimming pool, but something that's going to not allow us to completely check out, you know, as human beings, right? And some people have different levels of risk averseness. I want to say that the challenge for the new leader is, how do I develop a letting go attitude and a set of behaviors to go with that? And the bungee example is, I did that. I jumped off the highest freaking thing there was, and it was exhilarating. It was everything. And when that friggin' cord started to go, and you're just about touching the water, and you pop up and all that shit, I was fine. When I saw the video, which showed the cord fraying,
Oh gosh.
when I got home, when I got home and I saw that, I thought, okay, so I needed to let go. Somehow I let go of my fear to do that. That's number one. Number two, you've heard this word pivot. Here's my thoughts on pivot. You need to learn how to pivot in your strategy. So how you get to a strategy, I think, is a challenge. If you're waiting for the strategy of your customer to come from the customer, it's too late. Just think that through for a second.
Yeah.
If we're waiting for directions to come from the customer, it's too late. We need to be involved in the strategy. Why? Because you're the subject matter expert in security. You know things they don't want to know. They need to know it, right? And like the example I talked about, the physical abuse that nurses take, that sort of information. Well, there's certain things we need to do as a security force to prevent that. You need to be part of that discussion. The second thing about pivoting is that's your opportunity to be creative. That's your opportunity to be inclusive. So that's where your value add comes. Your value add doesn't come from being a security officer or security leader or vice president of security. Your value add to the customer comes from your creativity and your inclusion, which draws people with you, which inspires. That's a challenge going forward, because underneath every company we're going to take over, where we're going to do work, is this volcano of fear, uncertainty, and nobody ever deals with it. I call it a fog. But the organizational silence is the worst impediment to a safe organization, a profitable organization. Organizational silence is the worst cancer you can have. So if you think about some of the locations that you guys work in, there's lots of silence for whatever reason, political reasons, or people afraid of their jobs during these times. So people are going to be silent. So if you're not an inclusive leader who uses their commonality to get into the mix, to get the intel, to understand, and then bring that up to the decision makers to say, here's what's really going on. If you make this decision, you're fundamentally going to have these unintended consequences. That's my ace in the hole. If I had a dime for every time I said that, okay, Brent, if you make that decision, before we make it, let's list on the board what the unintended consequences are. Here's how much this would cost you. Here's what this costs you. You still want to make that decision? I don't think so. So that whole unintended consequence is something you have to become very, very good at. The other challenge is, how well can you become innovative enablers? So how can you stick up for, how can you champion this whole idea of fast, flexible teams that go on a set mission, they accomplish it, and then they move down the Pareto diagram to the next high impact project. Boom. Different SMEs, right? How
Right.
can you make that your operating style? Because let me tell you, when you do that, the customer sees speed. They see everything they need to be in their own business, right? That
Right.
makes you the vendor of choice. Now, I'm giving you this stuff. I'm saying this stuff because I'm hoping people just put two and two together. But these whole speed teams, you know, I was never, I'm not a veteran, but I was a Blackwater guy, so I did missions like this. And speed teams go in, they know where the hostages are, they take out whoever they need to take out, they get out. And it takes a minute and a half, boom, they're done. Here's the problem. This is why planning is not the greatest gift in the world. Having a plan isn't necessarily bad, but believing the plan is the sin. Because the plan is never the plan. On any mission you go into, it never, ever turns out exactly the way you want it to. Stuff happens in between.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So unless you're a really flexible thinker, quick on your feet, you have the experiences to back it, you're liable to walk right into an ambush, right? And you don't have time, because most of the time the problem you're going to solve is so big that you don't get a second chance at it. That's my logic, and it hasn't failed me yet. And I talked about this, data. So the Pareto diagram, that drives what project you're going to work on, and that drives the staffing needed. And and I wish there were some HR people or whoever does the hiring for you guys in security. Here's where the fundamental breakdown happens. We got jobs to fill. You got job openings today. I'm sure you probably got job openings. Okay.
Oh yeah.
If those job openings are written to the same spec that they were pre-COVID, we're hiring the wrong people. This process I'm talking to you about, this is a few days you should get off site. And I'm trying to pitch for myself here, obviously, but you get off site and objectively go through this stuff. And then you say, okay, to the talent management people, okay, here's how we're changing this. This is what the spec looks like. So the whole idea of failing fast makes a lot of sense, because if you don't fail fast, if you don't fail within the first 6 days and you find out there's a flaw 6 months later, you've already spent all this money and time over 6 months.
Right.
That's the business side of security. So I'm like, no matter what business I go into, I don't care how advanced they think they are, I tell them we got to start at zero. When you have a black swan event, we need to start at zero. Where does the process begin? And we need to reframe the tension in the organization. We got to start. We need to design from our personal why out to our what, that way. And if you do that, you got half a chance of succeeding and dominating. And that's the whole idea of black swan events. So there are companies out there that love this. They love what's going on, right? Because here's what happens, and I'll give you a good example. At the end of this, if it goes on, we will only have 3 retailers in the world, right? Amazon, Costco, maybe 4. Amazon, Costco, maybe a Home Depot or a Lowe's or something like that. And I don't know what the big ones are in Canada, but Amazon's got to be one of them anyways.
Yeah.
So they have, by virtue of the Black Swan event, wiped out all the mom and pop businesses. They wiped them out. And there's absolutely no way to get that strategic advantage back. So if you are in a position, which security organizations are, you can turn a black swan, is what they call it in the economic world. You can turn it into a white swan, meaning that you create such a fine-tuned team that everybody has to march behind you, every one of your competitors. So when you guys go in to compete for jobs, what do they do differently at your company? Here's what we do differently. And the stuff that we talked about today, this is pretty, we don't share the specifics of this, because this is what lets you dominate. This is the tells that you're finding out. So this stuff has every time you get knocked down, there's always some huge positive that if you're willing to jump back in the ring, you'll find it. And that's the beauty of this black swan stuff, is that if we all just admit, if we're humble enough to admit, okay, I'm not going to throw away everything I learned in the past, but I'm not going to rely on it. I'm not going to rely on it. That feels a little bit better. Okay. That feels a little bit better. So I'm not going to rely on it. But if Tony's right and I need to learn how to let go, I need to learn how to pivot, I need to learn how to become inclusive, I need to learn how to become transparent, I need to learn how to become humble. What does that mean in my management style? I got to learn these different capabilities. I got to learn how to create conditions of success for my people. I need to walk and talk. I need to be empathetic. I need to redefine my roles, responsibilities, and interdependencies, upstream and downstream. So that's your answer to what leadership is, what I just read out to you. That's the nitty-gritty of what a job description should be for leadership. When you get people applying for that job, you got some A players, buddy. And you can go after business that you could never go after before. That's just how I see the world. And that's how I go after it. And this is going to be tough on me. This is tough on me trying to take my business, which was me traveling 95% all over the world, and trying to do it remotely online.
Yeah.
But I'm going to pivot. I'm going to pivot because I know my why. I know why I do this. It's to inspire and help people. So I'm going to find a way to use all this information, all these friggin' life experiences, either through Zoom and some visits or whatever it tends to be. But it's never going to be the way it was before, where I'm traveling 95% out of the time because I want to be in the top 1% of all change consultants. I have to put that aside and say, okay, I need to go back to my why. I want to inspire people to do things well beyond what they thought they could do.
Right. Okay, I want to shift focus a little bit and I guess think from the perspective of a new leader.
Okay.
What are some of the challenges that are unique to new leaders in their new roles?
Okay, so the new leader comes to you with a whole set of expectations that he or she was fed from the hiring managers. Right? So, Tony, you're being hired, and here's the problems. So the new leader has lost their objectivity right away. So if I'm like direct report to a new leader, I'm saying to the new leader, hey, here's one of the lessons I've learned. This is how I'm going to learn for understanding. I'm just going to share it with you. I know some things about this organization, so I'm less objective, but if you could just put everything in one column that you've heard and then go experience the rest, you're going to come out ahead. I think that's really good advice that they would not expect to come from a direct report. Although I would welcome it, right? Because it shows me that direct report has some critical thinking skills. So that's the first thing. They're already biased. The second thing a new leader has is that they have a sense of urgency. They got to fix the sins of the world in 30 days, right? And there's some history there because the average tenure for new leaders is less than 18 months.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So, depending on what their job is, obviously, but pretty high. Executive level jobs is about 18 months, just long enough to hang yourself, and then you get bounced out. So the search firms know that. So that a new person coming in has to understand they need to figure out what the honeymoon period is. So if I'm a new person going in, I sort of got to get the lay of the land and try to figure out a few things. One is, where's my richest source of data? True, honest data. Two is, what's really going on with the business? I mean, when I dig into the numbers, what's really going on? You know, what accounting games are going on? Because every organization does it, right? So what's really going on? I need to understand that balance sheet. And the third thing is, I need to know my people. I need to know my people. So what do I need to know as a new leader coming in is, how do I get to know my people? How do I understand who they are on the outside and who they are on the inside? You know, IQ and EQ. And then I think for a new leader, they have to be able to somehow during this time when they get in there, and within the first 90 days, they need to really decide what tack they're going to take. So how impacted are they going to be by their peer group? Because there's a certain amount of, how well does Tony play with others? And is he one of us? Is he willing to be trusting with us, hide all of our sins so the boss doesn't find out? Or is he going to be the outlier? So a new leader has to basically try to make that decision, because when they try to do that simultaneously, they're lukewarm, and lukewarm is exposed very early. It blows trust on all sides. So I tend to, when I go into an organization, when I'm interviewing, I'm trying to self-select out when I'm interviewing. Okay, honest to God. I go in and I'm telling people that are interviewing me, this is how I am. I'm always going to ask tough questions. I'll try not to ask them in front of the boss or the board. I'll try to get you and I to have a conversation. But if it's something that's ethical, like this happened in another business where I exposed some illegal stuff going on with the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Oh, wow.
And I brought it up to the person who basically threatened me to never bring that up. And so then I went to the president. And I said, okay, we got a couple choices. We could either go that way, which I'm not going to jail for you guys, or you could just give me a huge package of money and I'll sign it away. And that's what I did. Because I could have went to the Securities and Exchange Commission with this company.
Yeah.
They still got caught. All right, because they were blatantly doing stuff that's against the law in this country. But greed will do that. Greed will do it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. So new leaders have some challenges. They have to really be able to describe, I use a term, and I'll send it to you, I'll write it down, but it's called hiwi kuisi. How would I know it if I saw it? That's a process I use with my new teams that I go into. I'll be involved with them, and let's describe, how will we know it when we see it? So if you're working for me, it says, okay, this is what it needs to look like. How you get there, that's your business. If you need my help in getting there, you need me to do some blocking for you, tackling for you, sort of, pull some strings, whatever you need me to do, I'll try to help you within these guidelines called values. But this is what it needs to look like when it's done. You got to be able to do it. You also need to know when to come to ask me for help, because it's not acceptable if we don't get to this end state. So that's how I lead. I really want to see who my subject matter experts are and whether they can think like a leader, because I want to hire people who are better than me. If I don't do that, then I can never be that humble leader. All I can do is be a controlling leader that knows, oh, I got all these people underneath me that don't have these great skills. You've worked for people like that, so have I. so is everybody on this call. So that's my take on it.
Okay. Now, just speaking to the people who are on this call, we're focused mainly on a group of leaders in the healthcare security arena. So, I ask you a bit of a loaded question here.
Yeah.
How can new leaders reduce their learning curve in that environment?
Okay, so tell me what the new leader. So give me an example of what the new leader does. Like, tell me what their team is made up of, and I think I know, but just tell me what it is. So
Yeah, for sure. So in most cases, it's going to be a new leader is going to be taking over, for example, a security department or a team, and you're looking at, I guess, healthcare security officers. So just security personnel in a healthcare setting, or you might have a hybrid situation where you have police and security in one department. So I guess the question is, I guess what's the approach that you want to take to
yeah.
reduce
So
the
I
learning
mean,
curve?
to me, I got this is my playbook.
Okay.
The playbook is this making it better process type of approach where you find a way to do a couple things at once. You find a way to get solid data. You find a way to create a learning opportunity for everybody involved. And then you find a way to execute whatever that plan is flawlessly. Right. And so if you can do those three things, the new leader is set. So the new leader has to be willing to. So in other words, if you get a really impatient new leader, right? So let's say in your business, let's say some hotshot from Allied Barton comes along and says, this is how we do things. We're a multi-billion-dollar company, blah, 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 blah. I've been through this training. Okay, great. Big deal. I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing that with me. Tell me how you're going to lead this group.
Yeah.
You don't even know our own unique set of situations here. So if I'm the new leader coming into there, my first priority is understanding the business and understanding the organization simultaneously. Who are my stakeholders? So who are my internal stakeholders? Who's my customer, that the head of the hospital or whatever that is? And who's the external one? So your boss's boss or something like that. And they gather data. And they let that data be rich and strong so it makes decisions for you. So if you have a organization of silence, like I talk about, right, you have to find a way. Yeah, so there has to be a way to get to the truth. It does no good for the new leader or for the new team to know half the truth or what they want to hear. So a good new leader will understand when they're only getting half of the story. And that's not what you want. You want the whole story so that we can figure stuff out as a team. And that's your chance to really earn trust with your team. It's not to go in there and fire two people right away for nothing because you happen to know two people at other companies, right? It's like, if I wanted to go run a business in your thing, I would not have to know that much about hospitals. I'd have to know security, and I'd have to know how to manage people and to deal with problems, and I'd have to know the business side of it. But what really makes me a winner as a new leader is I know the right questions in the right order. And if we do that, that answers your question. What can we do as a new leader? That's what a new leader does. A new leader has to come in with a process of inquiry. They got to go around with that book and take notes and take notes and take notes and validate. Take notes, validate. Take notes, vet them. And then get this picture of themselves. And by that time, hopefully you got one or two people that are really sharing the truth. And then you start bouncing stuff off. But unless you break that organizational silence, it's tough to really see any significant growth in the business and the people. And when it comes time for the speed team, they're not showing up, buddy. They're hiding. They don't have that responsibility. Right. What else so that's the best as I could say on that. That we get that, you got 99% of it.
Okay. Well, the other piece you've said a couple of times, you have to ask the right questions in the right order. You've emphasized that quite a bit. So I guess a bit of another loaded question here. What are some of the examples of these questions that you have to ask in the right order if you're a new leader?
Okay, so the questions you ask them, the questions that you ask is based on the data that you've collected. So if you go through this process I talk about, and let's say one of the capabilities that gets the most writing about is leadership. You take a look at that leadership category, and you're going to be able to sculpt some questions about what specifically is it about leadership? Is it about a style? Is it about a person? Is it about a specific guard? Is it about the customer, how they treat you? I mean, you need to, in other words, use the hospital example. I mean, you're a doctor, so you're getting diagnostic stuff. That's exactly what you're doing. So you're getting that, and you're looking at it, and now you got to validate it. So you get the data, you don't believe it or you don't not believe it, it's just data. Now you got to validate it. So what questions do I need to validate that? So you dig a little bit deeper into this. And then it's going to take you down some rabbit holes. It's going to take you down some paths that, boom, you're going to know when you hit, a pain point. And then you mark that off and say, okay, I need that. That's one thing I got to follow up on. How I follow up on that, I don't know yet. I got to put together a speed team to do that. And that's what great leaders do. So they spend that extra little time getting big data into compartmentalized and then putting together a flexible, fast team, solve it, bang it out of the way so it doesn't come back, move on to the next one.
Start to wind down a little bit here, but in previous conversations when we were talking before, you just mentioned some of the work that you do with the vets, and also just from just reviewing some of the information, you do some work with gang intervention as well as some work raising money for breast cancer research. Do you mind telling us?
Yeah,
about that?
Well, the cancer stuff is that's a friggin' emotional one for me, but it's so in Buffalo, this happened in Buffalo. Both of my sisters, who are 16 and 20 years older than me. I was basically a mistake, I was told. But anyways, another story over a beer. They both got breast cancer. And I couldn't figure it out because, and now I get it, but I couldn't figure it out then because one of them got treated in Phoenix at a specialty hospital called the Mayo Clinic. And one of them got treated at a state hospital in Buffalo. And the bill in the specialty hospital was 4 times as much as the state hospital for the exact same chemo, same brand, same everything.
Right.
So I'm friends with a bunch of Buffalo Bills. And I won't bring up his name, but anyway, so I asked him for his opinion on this stuff, and does a lot of charity work. And he said, why don't you sponsor a Susan B. Komen run? So I did. So I sponsored it for $75,000 out of my pocket. And the idea behind this run was they were going to have the 600 top breast cancer researchers in the world coming to this event. So you know me a little bit, but you can tell my mannerisms. I get focused on that target. I'm going. I mean, there's no stopping me. So
yeah,
I get in that room. I got my 2 sisters sitting at the front table, and they introduce me, and I go, I only have one question for all of you. Just one effing question. So everybody's dressed up, and this is me. I'm being me. Is there a cure for breast cancer? So this was 12 years ago. Is there a cure for breast cancer? Place goes quiet. One of those defining moments in my life. One guy raises his hand and says, yes, in the back. So immediately I start asking questions like I would normally do, but they weren't as nice as I'm telling you. My question was, then why in the F are people suffering all over the world And we're collecting more and more billions of dollars for more research if there's already a cure. I said, somebody help me with that. And the lady in the front said, here's the problem, Mr. DaDante. We don't get rewarded for the cure. We get rewarded for our research. There's absolutely no incentive for us to share what we find with other researchers. True story.
Yeah.
That's why, you know me, I love to tie it into something. That's why this event, this Black Swan event, you not only have the COVID pandemic, you've got the fear and uncertainty pandemic that comes with it, right? But here's the third one you got. You have a pandemic of collaboration, because for the first time ever, companies that were competitors are sharing information.
Right.
So how can we take that model? How can security leaders in hospitals take that collaborative model to be better at what you do and find better, faster, safer, whatever the metric is? So that's my work with cancer hospitals and cancer. And for me recently, now I got 5 people, and I'm having to fund all this stuff out of my pocket because the insurance doesn't cover some of these special stuff. So I literally spent almost $1 million out of my pocket. That's my retirement, right? So I now have gone from looking for the cures to being the guy that pays that money. And it pisses me off all the more, right? Because all I keep thinking about is what that one guy said. We're not incentivized. So how many people are we allowing to have cancer and just give them ways to deal with stuff, treating the symptoms, as opposed to, you know, that's what my brain is going at. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But so that's my piece with that. Obviously, that's an emotional one for me. Gang intervention piece. I have done gang intervention. I grew up in gangs, very, very much involved with some motorcycle gangs. I've done some, as I think back about them, crazy interventions with rival motorcycle gangs where everything is settled with your fists. I've done work up in Montreal undercover. Some nasty stuff used to go down up there. I don't know anymore. But yeah, so that used to be a passion of mine. And that had led me to do some, be an operator, doing work sort of to help stop the cartels in South America. So I've done some work there too. None of it business related, by the way. So what else can I tell you? I forgot the other parts of your question.
The only other part was the work that you're doing with the vets.
Okay, so for the vets, I have a huge passion for these special forces guys. So on October 11, I think 11 years ago it was, 2011. There was a special mission called Operation Extortion, where in Afghanistan, a Chinook helicopter got shot down, and 30 Navy SEAL / Special Forces guys died, and one operator dog. And I do work for the Brian Bill Foundation. Brian was one of those SEALs who was an incredible human being. Okay, humble, smart, multilingual. I mean, everything. So I do a lot of work for this foundation, Brian Bill Foundation. I also do work for a place called 31 Miles for 31 Heroes, which is when we walk 31 miles for the 31 guys who died. And through the years, I've done individual coaching, helping these guys get transitioned into business. I've trained with them with firearms, with self-defense, that sort of stuff. I've learned from them. I've taught them things. These are just friends of mine, people that I've got to know through the charities. And I have a huge appreciation for their mental toughness and their mental acuity, right? First of all, they're like the guy that choked me out in 32 seconds, right? I mean, you look at a Navy SEAL, you look at the most elite fighters that you guys have in Canada, not many of them look really intimidating. You would never know they have an arsenal, right? You would never know it. And very, very few of them brag about it. So I have PTSD, and a lot of them that come back from war or engagements come back with PTSD as well as other impairments. So I get involved with the charities, especially Brian Bill Foundation, where we rehabilitate soldiers and their families to help them come back into society, and then try to help them find jobs and do all that. So we use the latest technology that's out there, and that's my way of giving back, because I know that at some point while they were in, they did something to keep my freedom the way it is today. I know they did a lot more than I ever did, and I will not stop supporting them. So that's basically what I do for them. And the majority of them are really good. There's obviously those Rambos out there that are idiots, but so everybody has those. But we happen to have, I don't know if you've ever heard how becoming a SEAL, what you do first. You got 200 guys. You walk into the Gulf of Mexico and you tap out. You ring the bell. I mean, all you're doing is sitting in water. The water's getting you close to temperatures that your body's just not used to, and your mind and you literally lose half the class. So these are the guys who are the best in shape. These guys are monsters. So when you think about that, there's guys that I bring to training that I do. Don Mann, there's a guy, Don Mann, he's a SEAL, the SEAL Team 6 leader, 23 years in the SEALs, it's like being in the NFL for 23 years. Like, how do you do that? And he's as humble as they come. They don't talk about how he goes and runs 100-mile marathon. Yeah. How do you do that? I ran one marathon. I still feel it after all these years. So, how do you do that? So, I mean, the military guys and women have some great skill sets that they come out of the service with, but they also now have to go back to zero. So it's like nobody can get out of the way of the black swan. It just comes.
Right. So I know you mentioned this a little bit earlier. You've had to kind of shift focus with the current state of the world. How are you currently, or what are you currently working on, and what can we expect to see from you in the coming months?
Yeah. So I'm doing coaching work. I got good customers, multinational companies, and what I'm doing now is what I call bang meetings. I do them 24/7, depending on where they're at, what country. They're called a bang meeting because the intent of the meeting is to change the amount of time we spend talking on strategy, operations, and talent acquisition. So normally you'd have a meeting that you spend 75% of the time talking about operations related stuff. I reverse that with people. I now have teams that I lead their meetings where it's 75% strategy, 20% operational, and 5% the talent chain, right? Or something in that area, something about learning. And we tackle, we start the meeting off with open heart, open mind. So we go around the table and we share what's going on in our life from a family perspective, what's going on in our business. And everybody around that table that I've developed these teams with these different companies have developed trust in their peers. So before we even talk about business, we are modeling the new behaviors, the empathy, type of thing. So, and then we dig into strategy, what's going on. So for instance, today I opened up a meeting with saying that let's all make sure we understand what's going on in the world from a business case, because we can get so caught up in our own little industry, our own little business, that we don't realize what's going on around us. So I said to the group, if I told you that there's going to be a 3 to 5% retraction in the global economy, what does that mean to you? That's the first question. And then I said, if I told you that 20% of the companies that are publicly traded refuse to give guidance on their next quarter's worth of business, what does that mean to you? And then the third question I final with is, what does that information and what you know already have to do with the customer experience? So we go around the table and people open up about those three things. Those three things lead into a strategy discussion that goes from out here to here to here to finally direct on our team in our operation, whatever it is. And we do that every day, or some of them are every day, some of them are 3 days a week. And I take the role of the CEO. So the CEO or the manager, whoever it is, whatever VP, whoever it is, they let me run the meeting remotely. This way they get to concentrate on strategy, where they don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And I take some notes and I lead it from here, and I ask tough questions. So I'll have them all on a Zoom screen, and I'll have a question for, if we're talking about finance or something, I'll come out of nowhere with a question to the marketing guy. Okay, how is this affecting your ad spend? It to be like, so what I've done is I've proven myself as a business leader with them, as well as a consultant, talking on, getting their team to be fast, flexible, post-COVID teams. So that's the majority of my work right now. And then I have a whole group of people that I do individual coaching with. I have 3, 6, 9, and 12-month programs. Obviously being done by this right now, but normally we meet somewhere. I really don't put a time limit on it. I spend a couple days with them, whatever it is. We go through personal stuff, business stuff, and I walk them through not a curriculum. I walk them through where I see their development as, and I get data. I mean, I do 360s, and I learn about them, and I learn about their business, and I come up with questions that make them, some of them say I'm provocative. That's how we should be. I'm provocative with them. I'm drawing them out of their comfort zones so that they're ready for their next job. And I tell them what their derailers are. So I'm doing a lot of the dirty work that HR or some manager never really knew how to say with a person. And I think they appreciate that, most of them. And the only other thing is I'm really debating about writing this book right now on this organizational silence. So I'm going to put I just wrote an article on LinkedIn somewhere in my page there, but I'm thinking about just writing a short book on that, because I think it's that powerful that unless teams really start digging into that first, they're wasting a lot of time, effort, people's lives. There's Jack Welch, for as famous as he was, and I had this argument with him / debate at Harvard one time, where I said to him, he had a thing where he wanted to change out the bottom 10% of every organization year on year.
Yes,
that's how he got the name Neutron Jack. And I said to him, you know what I think you're doing, Jack? I think you're just avoiding what's underneath the belly of the beast. You're avoiding it because you think if you take out the bottom 10%, you're taking away the victims. That's not where the problem is. I want you to manage performance, yes. But to assume it's the bottom 10%, the belly of the beast has a lot more venom in there than you're allowing it to come up in a natural way. And, you know, Jack left, and interesting fact, when Jack was alive, leaders who left GE under Jack went to their first job and they got fired within 12 months. 90%.
Wow.
That says something. Yeah, so buddy, hopefully this is helpful to you. I think it's obviously, you know, my passion behind it. And I think I can support the arguments of, you know, getting people to rethink how they think. And you don't hear terms like team building and empowerment and blah, 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 all that crap. You know, let's get into the meat of it. If we're going to fight, let's fight.
Yeah.
Let's do it. But I'm glad I met you, and I'm glad this was helpful.
Likewise. In closing, is there any special message that you want to share with the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Yeah, I think my message for the I was going to say the Outcast. No, that's a band, right? You know, this probably is this is more from the heart message than anything else. I think you guys, and I can only speak of the States, right? And maybe it's the same up there, but I think what I see in that space is people are operating 1 or 2 levels below their title. So I'll leave you with that. Just think about that. If I'm operating 1 or 2 levels below my title, what am I doing when I'm supposed to be leading? How can I possibly be leading if I'm spending my time 1 or 2 levels below? And I think the answer to that has some significant upside for the function and significant upside for your clients. Like if I was a new business development person for your group, I would be going into customers with, here's one of the things we don't do. We operate at the level of our people. We develop these specialized skills. So when it is go time, we are there. Right. Other than that, you may not even hear. We're silent. We're doing our thing. But when we come to you, we're coming to you with some facts, and we need you to support us. You know, so I guess I throw a prayer out to all you guys for what you got to do, and very selfishly, I ask you to step up to the violence problem with nurses in these hospitals. How you do that, I don't know how you do it. I know how I do it, but I'm not in your shoes right now. So I just know it's a problem, and I do. You know, I see so many. See so many domestic abuse cases, and I see what happens to women, and it just friggin' tears me apart, right? And to know that stuff happens is beyond belief to me. And so even between doctor and nurse, that your industry happens to have very defined lines of from big shot to lowest level. You know, you have the doctors, and you got the nurses, and you got the admin. Whatever the order is up there, I don't know. But those doctors, they got to get humbled. They got to know they got to have a team. They got to treat people right. Otherwise, these people are going to fail them, and your mother, father, brother are going to be the victims of that stupid ignorance. So I've had focus group meetings with doctors, because you know the one thing they don't teach them in medical school, they don't teach them this. They don't teach them to communicate. They teach them to be a friggin' refrigerator freezer, right? So they don't understand that communication connection with a patient. I wouldn't say all of them, but the majority of them, without a doubt. So I think there's issues, and I think they're sort of they're undiscussable because somebody wants them to be undiscussable. If I can help any of you guys, let me know. You know where to find me.
All right. Well, I know where to find you, but for the folks who are listening, how can we connect with you?
Connect with me through LinkedIn. That's the best way. My numbers are on there. I have both websites on there. I have for two reasons. I have one that was the old Tony and what I did and how I had to pivot. And I'd ask you to go to that 360 Life Transformations website, and just the minute it clicks on, it's going to go into a video that just hits you. It's emotional. It tells you where we're at.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time, Tony. I really appreciate it. And
man.
yeah, we covered a lot of stuff in this these couple hours. So thank you very much for that. Will do. Take care. And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Thanks again for joining us. And just a reminder that you can connect with us on social media. We have company pages on both Facebook and LinkedIn, as well as groups that you can join. Also, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Feel free to connect with me directly as well. My name again is Brian, B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Also, feel free to check out my website, brianhamilton.com, and we have links to all the platforms on that website. Join us again next week when our guest is IHSS Board of Directors member Dan Yaros. Until then, stay safe and take care.